So maybe you decide that there are no sessions, your research is something different, or you're talking to a friend and you say, gosh, it'd be really neat to see a session on this topic. Then you can organize your own session. So this is a little bit more of an advanced method of participating. I would not recommend it unless you've been to at least one conference, right? If you've never been to a conference, I think organizing a session on your own can be kind of difficult. And you probably should have participated in a session so you can see how they work. The other thing that you can do is you can co-organize. So I have co-organized sessions before with other people that I was just talking to, and we're like, oh, we'd really like to see a session on this. And then one of the nice things about co-organizing is you have someone to collaborate and work with, so you're getting to know a colleague better. But often you also have different sets of contacts, right? So part of organizing a session is contacting people who might want to participate. So if you're working with someone else, you're sort of doubling that list of potential ideas of people who might participate. So once you've come up with a session, you have to write an abstract. So the abstract of the session basically describes, it's like the abstract for a paper. It says, here is what this session is about in broad terms. And this abstract is both submitted to the SAAs, but also it's what you email potential participants. So when you're contacting people to be part of your session, it's not very helpful to be like, oh, we're putting on a session on landscape archaeology. Okay, that's great, but participants want more details. So it's a session on landscape archaeology in historic Mesopotamia, and that gives them ideas. Like, oh, does my research fit into this? Does it not? When you're emailing potential participants, don't feel bad if they say no. People are really busy. Sometimes they don't feel like they have research that quite fits. Sometimes they've already committed to doing something. You can't participate and be a presenter in multiple sessions, really, right? So I can't give 4 papers at the SAAs as first author. And so sometimes participants have already agreed to be part of a different session. But one of the things that you can tell potential participants, that is definitely a tongue twister, is that they can spread your abstract. So maybe they have a junior colleague that you don't know who would be a really good meet and fit for this session, who just hasn't published their research yet, right? And so this is a great way. Organizing a session is a really good way of making connections with fellow researchers. So both researchers you already know but maybe haven't met yet, people whose articles you've read and thought were really interesting, and sometimes junior colleagues or peers who are just kind of coming up in the ranks whose research hasn't been published yet but is going to be really interesting and have already kind of neat ideas to contribute. So you have succeeded, you have recruited people, you have a phenomenal session organized, and you're ready to go, and you are a session chair. So this is kind of a burden of responsibility. You need to be contacting your participants and reminding them about deadlines. So they need to submit an abstract to your session, they need to register for the meetings, and then they also need to make sure that their membership to the SAAs is current. So I think the current deadline is you need to be a member by January 30th in order to participate in the SAA conference or the meetings. So you'll get reminder emails and you need to check too and say, okay, are any of my members, have they gotten their abstracts in? Is anyone's membership lagging? And remind them because, people forget, right? And so that's one of your big roles. You also, if you have a discussant, so some sessions have a discussant, and this is someone who at the end of the session comes together and sort of says, okay, let's pull all of these papers together. What kind of things are they all talking about and sharing? What things do they have in common? And kind of bring that together. And if you have one of these discussants, you need to ask them if they want the papers in advance. And if they do want those papers in advance, then you need to tell the participants and you need to give them a fair amount of advance notice, right? So no one likes to be told that they have a paper due a week before the deadline. So it's always good to tell them, a couple months in advance, like we have a session discussant and they would like their papers by blank. And then remind them again. Once you're at the conference, here are a couple of common mistakes that session chairs make. And and ways to be, a truly advanced session chair here. Bring your laptop and make sure you have something to connect to the projector. So especially now with newer laptops, they tend not to have the port that the big old clunky projector things connect to, and so you need a dongle often. Something to make sure that your laptop is going to speak to the overhead projector for people's PowerPoints. The other thing is, in a lot of these rooms, the internet is not always great. So the last conference I was at, the internet in the session rooms was terrible. And a lot of people had their presentations in the cloud, right? People use Google Drive, people have online prezis. And if the internet's not regular, that means people cannot access their slides. And we spend a lot of time building these presentations and making our slides look beautiful and thinking through the content. And we also use them as speaking cues, right? So make sure that you get presentations in advance and that you have them on a drive, an external drive, or you've actually downloaded them onto your computer. Most presenters are more than happy to give you their presentations at least the night before, right? We generally have them done. And this just helps things run a little bit more smoothly. The other thing is you need to keep your session on time. And this can be challenging, right? People go over. They haven't timed themselves. They haven't practiced. They just get distracted and they start telling side pieces and side stories. And it is okay to kind of do the wrap it up gesture. I've seen presenters put, 2, 1, 0 on sheets of paper and actually hold them up as a countdown, right? Giving presenters a moment to kind of say, hey, you need to start wrapping this presentation up and finishing. There's nothing worse than a session that starts to run really behind. Because it slows everybody down. And one of the things you see at the conferences is people are timing themselves to come and see their friends presenting.